Jeff, top 10 teams in the NFC. Where do the Lions rank after the draft? You know how I felt about this team leading up to the draft.
And I've not seen this list. This is
going to be your first time, so I can't wait. But I think after the draft, and we'll get more to this at 8:30, I think there are some teams in the NFC that just had really good drafts. I think you could look at the Eagles, who were already above the Lions, but I think they cemented their place at the top of this list. You look at a team like Seattle. Seattle had another phenomenal draft. Phenomenal draft. Devin Witherspoon, JSN. Seattle just continues to draft really well. And you know what? Before we even get to the list, I want to apologize because I was wrong. When the Pete Carroll-Russell Wilson breakup happened, I questioned how you break up from a franchise quarterback and you choose the coach over him, given that they were just losing. Pete Carroll, reminding everybody he's still a very capable coach in the NFL. Got to give John Schneider a ton of credit and how they've handled themselves post-Russell Wilson trade to go out and win last year and make the playoffs and now double down in not only free agency but in the draft with a lot of talent. Seattle really winning a lot of hearts. I got to give them a ton of credit. But let's start with the list. We'll start with number one, the Philadelphia Eagles, Jeff. This is a no-brainer. The returning, defending NFC champions. You can't debate whether or not the Eagles shouldn't be number one. I think number two, and the team that you have to just say it's the truth. The Niners have gotten better. They got John Hargraves. They've made significant upgrades. The problem with the Niners is what's going on with Brock Purdy? What's Trey Lance going to look like? We like to believe Brock Purdy is the starter, but what does any of that mean? And look, I really considered putting Seattle here at 3. I really did.
Wow.
I really wanted to put Seattle at 3, but I've got the better quarterback. I think roster to roster, I don't blame anybody giving Seattle the advantage or Detroit. I can make cases for both. To me, it's dead even. And yes, they have the more proven coach, but I do like Jared Goff much more than Geno Smith. That's going to be the difference maker for me. Lions are going to be at 3 in this scenario. I think they had a good draft. I don't like where Jahmyr Gibbs was picked. I mean, you know how I feel about that. But the reality is they got 4 quality football players in the first 2 rounds.
Right.
They drafted a potential future backup, future starter maybe in the NFL in the 3rd round in Hendon Hooker. No pressure there. I think the Lions overall had a good draft. We'll talk about positional value and what that means coming up in the next segment. But I think they're the 3rd best team in the NFC. I don't think they have an excuse at all this year. And if I'm being honest with you, there's a huge gap after 4. Seattle, I think, narrowly, just behind Detroit. And I wouldn't be mad at anybody that had Seattle ahead of Detroit. That's really what I think of Seattle. I think they're a very good team, only getting better. Seattle are going to sit there at 4 for me for all the reasons I've already explained. And then we get into this weird area where it's just a bunch of teams. I don't buy any stock into the Dallas Cowboys. I never have, and I never will. I just can't do it. Mike McCarthy's their coach. Dak Prescott is their quarterback. I'm sure they'll win 10 games this year, and that's about it. I don't have much confidence in them. A team I have a lot of confidence in is the New York Giants. Deontay Banks, the work they did in the draft. Re-signing Daniel Jones, not my favorite move. We'll see what they do with Saquon, but this is a football team that is getting better. And hopefully that talent that they're investing in, Jeff, gets closer to where the level of their head coaches, who, by the way, defending coach of the year, where Brian Daboll is. And the closer they get, the better this team will get. I have them 6th on my list. 7th, for the only reason that Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp are on the team. And now healthy, those 3, along with a very good coach in Sean McVay. They had a ton of draft picks. Yes, no first-round picks, but they've really, really brought a lot of depth to this team. I think they'll have a much better answer for their offensive line struggles this year. I expect LA to at least be in the wild card hunt This year, I don't expect them to contend for the division. And then you get to the New Orleans Saints, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Atlanta Falcons. The Saints and Falcons, to me, are the favorites to win that division. I think they're 1A and B. That's not saying much considering how shit that division is. But I think the Saints have the best quarterback in the division. Atlanta got the best running back, and we'll see how that pans out for them. Wearing number 7, by the way. How do you not love Beydoun Robinson after that? Can't wait to hear what you think of that. But Minnesota at number 9. What do you want me to say? Hey, Minnesota, great job. You went out and hired Brian Flores. That's your marquee offseason move after winning 13 games. Go fuck yourself, Minnesota. I have zero confidence in Minnesota, zero confidence in Green Bay. Hell, I have more confidence in Chicago than I do in Minnesota right now. And I really like Kevin O'Connell. But they did nothing to address the defense. They've lost Adam Thielen. Good luck. Enjoy, Minnesota. Enjoy. You're lucky to win 9 games this year. That's my ceiling for Minnesota. If they win 9 games, I'd be impressed, Jeff. What do you think of the list?
So, I have one question for you.
Go for it.
I see Atlanta made your top 10.
Yep.
Why Atlanta over Carolina?
I trust the coach more. I think Arthur Smith, really since he's taken over, they've been an average team because they've had an average roster. This is a team that's upgraded their secondary. Jesse Bates coming into town. They traded for Jeff Okudah, whatever. But they've addressed the defensive line. They have Grady Jarrett. They have good linebackers. This is a defense that's going to be better this year. Hopefully Kyle Pitts returns and gives you 70% of what you thought he'd be. So that's going to be a big thing for their offense. You're going to have now Beydoun Robinson, Tyler Algier in the backfield. You're going to have Drake London going into year 2. This is a good football team. I think a very balanced football team, and I like to think Arthur Smith is going to coach his way into 9-8, 8-9, and that's probably enough to win the division again this year.
So I see where you're coming from. I think that's fair, especially if you feel that way about Arthur Smith, but I could make an argument, and this is probably, I have a couple things that I want to bring up, but the first one is Atlanta. Could I argue that Carolina, you talk about quarterback, we could probably give it to Carolina. I would say Bryce is better than Desmond Ridder. I mean, unless you want to go Desmond Ridder, that's on you. If you want to go that route, I would go Bryce Young. If we talk about, offense, what they have.
Is Ridder starting or Heineke? That would be my
Either
question.
way, I think Bryce is better than either of them, to be honest with you.
Fine, I'll give you that.
But he's a number 1 pick. He should be, if we're being honest. With Carolina, I know what they have defensively. Like, there's no, Atlanta should be better. No, I know Carolina this year will be one of the best defenses in the NFC. They always are. So, defensively, we know they're better. Frank Reich, as much as you want to say about Frank, he can win games. I mean, he's inconsistent over the last couple of years with the Colts, but again, he's never had the quarterback position figured out. Now they have it. At least with Bryce, you expect them. So that's probably my biggest. I would probably put Carolina over Atlanta. I'm not mad you have Atlanta, especially if you feel that way about what they've done. They added Beydoun. Their offense is explosive. You assume their defense is going to improve. I would probably lean Atlanta. But Seattle at, what was that, 4?
4.
Over the Cowboys.
Is that a problem, or do you think they should be lower, higher?
No, it's not that I think they should be significantly lower. I'm trying to digest that over the Cowboys. And listen, if you want to, talk about the Cowboys and crap all over the Cowboys, I have no issue with that. But if we're just talking strictly, post-draft, roster.
Seattle, I would rank them, again, like I said, I think you can make the case Seattle has the best roster in the NFC outside of the Niners and the Eagles. I think that's a legitimate case anybody can make. I wouldn't be mad at them. That's why I have them so high. What did Dallas do that was so impressive in the draft, let alone free agency?
That's why you didn't hear about them the entire draft.
What is it?
That's why you didn't hear about them the entire draft. They didn't do anything.
The only good thing they did was draft Deuce Vaughn.
But also, Dallas is picking 26, so they're winning games. Seattle, of course, they had Denver's pick.
That's great.
So Dallas is still if you're basing this list off postseason success, Dallas is still going to win 12 games this year. I mean,
Seahawks won as many playoff games as the Cowboys did last year.
Well, again,
Lions have been to as many NFC championships since 2000 as the Cowboys.
If you're talking about postseason success, then yes. I mean, I'm going to make fun of the Cowboys.
Why would I buy stock?
But who's a better team if we're going unit by unit?
I think you can argue Seattle over Dallas easily.
So let's go then.
Okay, secondary.
Secondary.
Tariq Woolen, now Devin Witherspoon. And an already established safety position.
Okay, but
what?
Are we gonna...
Don't say his name. Don't do it. Trayvon Diggs?
It's not even just Trayvon. They added Stephon Gilmore this offseason. Like, is he
An aging
is he
corner.
hot garbage? Okay,
I mean,
aging.
he's 33, 34
I'm just
years
saying.
old.
So if you want to take a rookie and
Am I getting
Tariq
New
Woolen-
England Stephon Gilmore? I'll give you that. I don't think I'm getting that, though.
No, he's not New England Stephon Gilmore, but he's still something. He still has something left in the tank. Stephon could still be not elite, but a good cornerback. We'll go defensive line. I'm giving that no question to the Dallas Cowboys.
I'll give you that.
Offensive line, I think that's a toss-up. Dallas has a really good offensive line. Quarterback, I'm giving it to Dallas. Backfield, okay, you want to go Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, I can make a case. I mean, in the short, you talk about carries, Tony Pollard was underutilized, and he still produced. So, I mean, wide receivers, I would probably give you Seattle. I mean, even though they got CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, like they got a pretty good,
Seattle's got
wide
DK,
receivers.
Tyler Lockett, and JSN
So I'll give
now.
you that. I'll give you
And
that.
they drafted Zach Charbonnet.
No, and I'll give you that, but keep going. We'll go linebackers.
Fair to say,
You see what I'm saying? Like, as you go through the rosters, I'm going to give the edge to Dallas there. Even though I get what you're saying, Seattle had a hell of a draft, and they got better, but how much better? Are they significantly better than the Cowboys or one spot above? I don't think so. I think they're still a top 5 team in the NFC.
well, let's look at the win total last year. How many games did Dallas win? 11?
Yes, they did.
11-6, right? Seattle was a 9-8 football team. Now let's look at Dallas having to play Washington and the Giants twice compared to Seattle having to play the Rams twice, the Niners twice, and the, I'm forgetting them, Cardinals twice.
Mm-hmm.
Tough division. Very difficult division. Look, I get it, but there are two teams I think that just got significantly better. Did the Cowboys have a better offseason and draft? Let me ask you this. Did they have a better offseason and draft than the Lions?
No.
Okay, did they have a better offseason and draft than the Seahawks? And this is where my problem is. I watched the Detroit Lions go out and get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, Cam Sutton, David Montgomery, re-sign some players, and then have the draft they just did, which is dividing the fan base at the moment, but that's not my problem right now. We'll get to that in 5 minutes. I watched Seattle get Devin Witherspoon, who the Lions wanted, by the way, and they would have taken at 6. I watched them get Jackson Smith and Jimba, arguably the best receiver coming out of this draft class. And they kind of hinted at how weak this wide receiving draft class was because of how many were taken and where they were taken. This wasn't last year with Olave, Garrett Wilson, James Williams, Drake London, Jahan Dotson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not. That wasn't this year, and they addressed it. You had Devon Witherspoon with Tariq Woolen. You give Geno Smith another weapon. You had Zach Charbonnet for depth in case Kenneth Walker goes down.
Yeah, they had a good draft.
Goodness.
They did.
I think the Lions and Seahawks with the Eagles, those are the 3 teams I think had the best offseason in the NFC, and that's why I have them so high on my list.
Yeah, and again, the Cowboys, through the draft, I mean, Mozzie Smith in the first round, you really go through it. They didn't have the most impressive draft.
The Dallas Wolverines.
But the
that's
offseason,
what we call them.
yeah, no, definitely. But if you look at just the offseason, I mean, they added Brandon Cooks. They added Stephon Gilmore. Like, it's not like they did
That's
nothing.
fine.
They
So
got
they
better.
averaged-
The Cowboys got better
They
this
added
offseason.
like marginally better players,
Yes.
right? They made marginal upgrades,
Yeah.
and that's fair. And I think for a good team, that's a big deal, right? That can be the difference between being good and great.
but they're
But
still the Cowboys.
I don't believe in them at all.
No,
Right?
I'm not saying
and
I
I
do
think
either.
that plays a big role in this list.
Yeah.
And Seattle just went from good, and they made significant upgrades, and they're now, I think, at the level of a Dallas. Just like I think Detroit is at the level of a Dallas. I don't know how. If I'm in a toss-up game, I got to bet money. Am I picking the Lions or the Cowboys in a head-to-head matchup right now today? Fully healthy teams,
Yeah.
I'm going with the Lions.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I would do the same with the Seahawks. I would do the same with the
The one
Seahawks. I
question-
wouldn't blink twice.
The one question I cannot wait to get answered this season is Geno Smith. Like, it was last year, because I've seen people talk about the quarterback position, Geno versus Dak. And listen, Dak had a terrible year last year. But please, guys, to say Geno Smith is better than Dak, I mean,
Dak Prescott's he's a black
Are you
Kirk Cousins.
but,
Slash
but,
Ryan
But to
Tannehill.
say Geno Smith is better than Dak,
I mean,
off
that's
of
not saying
last
much.
year.
I mean, what are we saying?
No, but that's okay. Let's. My big question
That's
I want
like
to get
saying
answered is what
shit tastes better
what does
than
Geno
manure.
Smith do this year? Like, if he has another year like he did last year, I'll shut up and give him all the credit.
Well,
But again, and he should.
what do you want them to
You
do?
had JSN, you got DK, you got Lockett, you got Kenneth Walker. He has pieces. but I've only seen 1 year of Geno. Like, so
That's
again,
great. I don't know what I've seen from Dak.
Well, I've seen 5 years of productivity.
Of what? Statistical productivity?
I'm not. Again, we're talking about the better player, Adam. You're talking about postseason. Again, if you want to talk about that, I agree. But that's not act like Dak 2 years ago didn't throw 37 touchdowns and 10 picks. Like, what are we doing here? Like, the guy isn't some like again.
I'm not
last
saying
year,
he's a scrub. I've seen Ryan Tannehill throw 33 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in a year.
Right.
I've seen Kirk throw 34 and 7.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And I think those guys
I
are
think
all...
Dak Prescott is an overrated quarterback. I don't think he's anywhere near top 10 material. To me, he's a guy, when you consider him in the top 10, it's because of circumstance. And I don't see it. Not that Geno Smith is any better. He's not. And that's the problem with what the Eagles have and everybody else in the NFC.
Yeah, it's
because the Eagles have the guy and everybody else really wishes they did.
Has a guy.
And then you can look at Bryce Young as a rookie and say, hopefully he can be the guy, but can't even say anything. He hasn't played a game of football in the NFL yet.